The dim, sterile light of the hospital corridor cast a harsh glow over Jide's weary face. A subtle knock interrupted his thoughts as he lay in the bed, his body still recovering but his mind restless. The door opened and a man stepped in, his silhouette tall and unyielding. "Mr. Jide," the man greeted, his voice low and precise. "I am Special Agent Ikuku. I'm here to inform you of a threat against your life." Jide blinked, trying to sit up straighter, his heart pounding. A threat? His mind reeled, racing to Inse and Emeka, the faces of those who once felt like family. Ikuku took a seat, pulling a file from his briefcase and placing it carefully on Jide's lap. Jide looked down at a file marked classified, a red stamp seared across it like a warning. "They planned it all," Ikuku continued, his gaze unflinching. "Nse and Emeka, they are closer than you think. Old lovers, schemers. That meeting at the restaurant, a setup. They are after your inheritance. And Emeka, he's already plotting to claim your life insurance. $250,000. He watched as Jide's expression darkened with each word. "But they have no idea who you really are." Jide felt a fire spark within him. Betrayal cut deep, yet something else flared beneath the anger. A sense of duty, a chance for redemption. Ikuku must have sensed it because he continued, his tone shifting to one of persuasion. "We need someone like you, Jide," he said. "Someone willing to do what it takes. Go undercover, gain the trust of those who hide in the shadows, and gather evidence that will cripple them." Jide's jaw tightened. He thought of the face of his would-be killers, of the son he never got to meet, and of the new mission being laid out before him. "What's the plan?" he asked, the words slipping from his mouth before he had fully considered the implications. Ikuku's mouth coiled into a satisfied smile. "You will become Vuga, an out-of-work computer scientist from Ogun State. Move to Abuja. Get close to the general's daughter, Oma. Infiltrate their word, and when the time is right, bring us what we need." It didn't take long for Jide to find himself thrust into the chaotic nightlife of Abuja, maneuvering through the party crowd until he spotted her, Oma, a dazzling but reckless figure in a whirlwind of noise and energy. The agency's team triggered a stage brawl nearby, and as chaos erupted, Jide moved swiftly, pulling Oma to safety. She had been charmed, even smitten, and when she invited him back to her place, he surprised her by treating her with unexpected gentleness. No advances, only calm kindness. From that first night, something sparked between Jide and Oma, an undeniable chemistry that transcended the wild nightlife where they had met. Despite our initial flirtations, Jide had held his ground, treating her not as a conquest, but as a person. His respect intrigued her, and she found herself drawn back to his modest apartment night after night, eager to know more about this reserved yet fascinating man. Their days together began to take on a rhythm of mutual discovery. Jide encouraged Oma to try things outside her usual world. Early each morning, he would invite her on sunrise jogs around the quiet parts of Abuja, where the streets were empty and the air fresh. At first, she complained, dragged her feet, and teased him about his old man habits. But she couldn't ignore the clarity she felt after each run, the joy in matching his pace, laughing as they pushed each other up steep hills. In the afternoons, Jide would take her to hidden corners of Abuja, places she never bothered to visit. He introduced her to the charm of quiet cafes where artists displayed their work and where poets gathered to recite verses of love and revolution. They strolled through markets, mingling with locals, tasting spicy street food, and discovering the city in a way that Oma had never thought possible. Every outing peeled back a layer of her party girl persona, revealing a part of her she had almost forgotten: her curiosity, her love for learning, and her openness to the world around her. Jide's influence sparked a genuine change in her, and she took up an online course in public speaking after he suggested it. He would sit beside her in the evenings, patiently helping her with assignments, even challenging her to practice her speeches on him. It became their private ritual. After her practice runs, Jide would pretend to be a skeptical audience member, asking her tough questions, pushing her to think on her feet. His dedication gave her a confidence she hadn't felt before. Their evenings were a contrast to the vibrancy of the day. Over quiet dinners at his place, Jide would cook simple, hearty meals, sharing stories about his life and letting her do the same. The easygoing pace allowed a deep trust to grow between them, a bond that felt genuine and real. Oma began to relax, to feel safe with him in a way she hadn't with anyone else. One night, after a heartfelt conversation about family, she found herself leaning in, their lips meeting in a gentle kiss that felt like the culmination of everything they had built together. From that moment on, their friendship blossomed into a quiet yet passionate romance. They became inseparable, and Jide's presence in her life was undeniable. Her once frequent wild nights out were now replaced by nights in with him, exploring books he recommended or watching old classic movies. He didn't judge her past, but embraced who she was becoming, and she in turn trusted him in ways she never thought possible. Her transformation didn't go unnoticed by her father, General Salami, who was known for his meticulous eye and influential presence. Salami had always viewed his daughter as somewhat of a liability. She was the wild spirit he had never been able to contain. But this newfound maturity in her sparked his curiosity. When his team reported on Vuga, the quiet, respectable computer scientist, he approved of him. Perhaps even impressed by how the young man had helped his daughter find a grounded, productive lifestyle. The moment of truth came when Oma invited Jide to meet her father. She was nervous but determined to show him the man who had not only captured her heart but had, in her eyes, made her a better person. They stood hand in hand before General Salami, who watched them with an approving yet calculating gaze. "Welcome, Vuga," he said, his tone measured but cordial, his eyes scanning Jide in that penetrating way. "You must be the man my daughter can't stop talking about." Jide met his gaze, calm but respectful. "It's an honor, sir," he replied, his voice steady. For the first time in years, Oma felt her father's approval. She knew the general had already researched every detail about Jide, but seeing them together seemed to solidify his respect. She could feel her father's usual suspicion fading as he accepted Jide's presence in her life. This was the moment Jide had prepared for. The door to Salami's private life had opened a crack, and he was finally in a position to begin the work he had come to do. But as he stood by Omar's side, he felt like a cold-hearted villain. No feelings, just focused on the job. Months passed, and the trust Jide built with Omar opened doors he never thought possible. The ultimate test came during a family gathering one Christmas, when he found himself at the general's private estate in Karu. The general himself was distracted with family, and in the dead of a night, Jide donned black and slipped into the mansion's hidden study. By dawn, he had gathered names, addresses, and connections, the pieces that would finally expose the general's dark empire. The mission took nearly 3 years, a test of endurance and deception. In the end, Jide handed over a dossier so powerful, so incriminating, it shifted the nation's power balance. The general decamped, his alliances shattered, but when the mission was over, Jide felt hollow, his thoughts drawn back to the betrayal that had set him on the spot. 3 years later, he returned, no longer Vuga, but Jide once again. This time, he wasn't here for the agency. He was here for Nse, for Emeka. He wanted answers, to confront them, to face the people who had torn his life apart for greed. And this time, he wasn't leaving without the truth. The end.
Subscribe to this channel for more amazing stories.